Most people believe they are living their own lives. They believe their choices are conscious, their reactions are logical, and their direction is self-determined. But if you slow down for a moment and begin to watch yourself honestly, you may notice something unsettling. You react before you choose. You avoid before you decide. You hesitate before you understand why. It feels automatic because it is. Much of what we call personality is not who we are. It is a set of old mental programs quietly running in the background. Programs written long before you had language for them, written in moments of confusion, fear, adaptation, and survival. You did not choose these programs, you absorbed them. A tone in someone's voice taught you how safe it was to speak. A repeated disappointment taught you what to expect from effort. An early rejection taught you how close you were allowed to get. Over time, these experiences turned into invisible rules. Rules about who you are, rules about what is possible, rules about what usually happens. And once a rule is written deeply enough, the mind stops questioning it. You simply live inside it. You may call it realism. You may call it being cautious. You may call it just how life is. But what if much of your life is not happening by choice, but by code? What if your reactions today are echoes of decisions you made years ago when you were trying to stay safe, not free? This is not a flaw. It is not weakness. It is intelligence doing what it was designed to do. The mind learned patterns to protect you, to reduce uncertainty, to avoid pain. But protection and growth are not the same thing. And a program that once kept you safe can quietly keep you small. The first step to change is not effort, not motivation, not forcing new beliefs. The first step is noticing that you are running a program at all. Because the moment you see the code, you are no longer completely inside it. And from that moment on, a different life becomes possible. Mental programs are not abstract ideas and not mystical forces. They are simple, practical patterns created through repetition. At their core, they are automatic connections between a thought, an emotion, and a reaction. Something happens. A familiar feeling arises, a familiar response follows, often before conscious thinking has time to step in. These programs were not created to make you successful or fulfilled. They were created to make life predictable. Predictability feels like safety to the nervous system. When the mind knows what usually happens, it can relax, even if what usually happens is unpleasant. This is why a person can remain inside patterns that limit them for years while fully understanding that those patterns are harmful. The program does not care about happiness, it cares about consistency. Many of these programs were formed in moments when you had little power and few options. The mind observed what led to less pain, less conflict, less risk, and it stored those observations as rules. Over time, these rules became automatic. You no longer hear them as thoughts. You experience them as instincts, moods, or gut feelings. A program may sound like caution, but it is often fear in a familiar disguise. It may sound like realism, but it is often an old conclusion repeated without being questioned. The reason these programs feel so convincing is because they once worked. They helped you adapt. They helped you survive. But adaptation is not the same as alignment. What protected you in one environment can restrict you in another. And when life changes but the program remains the same, inner conflict begins to grow. You may feel stuck, unmotivated, or frustrated without understanding why. In reality, nothing is wrong with you. You are simply following instructions that were written for a different chapter of your life. And until those instructions are brought into awareness, they will continue to quietly direct your choices, your energy, and the limits you accept as normal. Most mental programs are not formed through logic or deliberate thinking. They are formed through emotional repetition. The mind does not record what is objectively true. It records what is emotionally intense and repeatedly experienced. Especially early in life, when understanding is limited but sensitivity is high, the brain looks for patterns that help it navigate the world. A child does not analyze situations in detail. A child draws conclusions quickly because speed feels like safety. If speaking leads to tension, the mind learns to stay quiet. If effort leads to disappointment, the mind learns to lower expectations. If closeness leads to pain, the mind learns to create distance. These conclusions are not conscious decisions, they are survival shortcuts. And once they are formed, the mind repeats them whenever a similar emotional signal appears. It does not check the context. It does not ask whether the situation is truly the same. It simply recognizes the feeling and activates the response. Over time, these responses become part of identity. You stop experiencing them as learned behavior and start experiencing them as who you are. I am not confident. I am not good with people. I am not meant for more. These are not facts. They are memories speaking in the present tense. The power of these programs lies in their invisibility. Because you rarely remember when they were formed, they feel timeless and absolute. But they were created at a specific moment under specific conditions with limited information. What once helped you cope quietly turned into an internal rulebook. And now, without questioning it, you continue to live by rules that were written by a younger version of you, doing the best they could with what they knew at the time. One of the most frustrating realizations in personal growth is this: you can understand a pattern and still be controlled by it. You can see the program clearly, name it, even explain where it came from, and yet find yourself repeating the same reactions again and again. This happens because mental programs do not live in conscious thought. They live in the nervous system. They are stored not as ideas, but as emotional memory. The body remembers what the mind has already explained. When a familiar situation appears, the body reacts first. Muscles tense, breathing changes, energy contracts or scatters, and by the time conscious thought arrives, the program is already running. This is why willpower often fails. Willpower speaks to the surface, while programs operate underneath. The subconscious does not respond to arguments or logic. It responds to signals of safety and threat. If a situation feels similar to something from the past, the old response is activated automatically, even if the present moment is completely different. This is not resistance to change. It is consistency at work. The mind prefers a known pattern over an unknown outcome. Even growth can feel dangerous if it is unfamiliar. So the program repeats itself, not because it is correct, but because it is familiar. This is also why change can feel exhausting. You are not fighting reality. You are interrupting an automatic process that has been running for years. And until the body learns that the present moment is safer than the past, understanding alone will not be enough. Awareness opens the door, but retraining the system is what allows you to walk through it. The first real step in rewriting old mental programs is not trying to change them. It is learning to observe them without resistance. Most people instinctively fight what they discover inside themselves. They judge the reaction, criticize the thought, or try to replace it immediately with something more positive. But resistance strengthens the very pattern you are trying to dissolve. A program that is attacked feels threatened, and anything that feels threatened becomes more rigid. Observation works differently. When you observe a reaction without labeling it as wrong, the nervous system begins to relax. Instead of being inside the program, you are standing slightly outside of it. You start to notice when it activates, what situations trigger it, and how it feels in the body. Tightness in the chest, a familiar drop in energy, a subtle urge to withdraw, to rush, or to avoid. This is not analysis, it is awareness. Awareness creates distance, and distance creates choice. The goal at this stage is not to behave differently. It is simply to recognize in real time that an old pattern is running. Even noticing it after the fact still counts. Each moment of recognition weakens the automatic nature of the program. Over time, what once felt immediate and unavoidable begins to slow down. And in that slowing down, something new appears. Space. Space between what happens and what you do next. This space is the foundation of all change. Without it, no new program can take root. With it, transformation becomes not forced but natural. Once you begin to observe your mental programs, you will start to notice something subtle but powerful. There is a small window of time between a trigger and your reaction. At first, this window feels almost non-existent. The reaction seems immediate, automatic, inevitable. But with awareness, that window begins to widen. This is the moment where real change becomes possible. The pause is not something you force. It appears naturally when the nervous system feels just a little safer than before. In this pause, you are no longer fully identified with the old program. You are present. You can feel the impulse without obeying it. You can sense the familiar urge to withdraw, to defend, or to over-explain, and still choose not to act on it right away. Even a pause of 2 or 3 seconds is enough to interrupt years of conditioning. During this moment, you can silently acknowledge what is happening. You can say to yourself, "This is an old program activating," or "This reaction belongs to the past, not the present." You do not need to replace it with a positive thought. You do not need to decide anything immediately. The pause itself is the intervention. Each time you allow this space to exist, you teach your system something new. You show it that not every familiar feeling requires the same response. Over time, the body learns that the present moment is survivable, even when it feels unfamiliar. And as this sense of safety grows, the old programs lose their urgency. They no longer need to rush you into action. The pause becomes a doorway. On one side is the past repeating itself. On the other side is choice. Once the pause becomes available to you, the next step is not to change what you believe, but to change what you do. This is where many people get stuck because they try to convince themselves with words, but the subconscious does not update itself through language. It updates itself through experience. New mental programs are formed not by affirmations, but by small, consistent actions that create new evidence. When you behave differently in a familiar situation, even in a very subtle way, the nervous system begins to record a new pattern. You do not need to feel confident to act differently. You only need to act slightly outside the old routine, speaking a sentence you would normally hold back, staying present instead of withdrawing, taking a small step forward instead of waiting for certainty. These actions may feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is not danger. It is unfamiliarity. Each time you choose a new behavior and nothing catastrophic happens, the body learns something important. It learns that the old program is not the only option. Over time, these small experiences accumulate. The nervous system starts to trust the new path, not because it was told to, but because it has lived it. This is how a new program is written. Not through force, but through repetition. Not through belief, but through evidence. And slowly, almost quietly, what once required effort begins to feel natural. You are not broken. You never were. What you call your limitations are not defects in your character, but habits learned over time. You were trained by experience, repetition, and adaptation. And what has been learned can be unlearned, not through struggle, but through awareness and patience. Rewriting old mental programs is not about becoming someone new. It is about allowing parts of you that were once constrained to finally relax. You do not need to fix your entire life. You do not need to confront every pattern at once. Real change begins with one moment of awareness, one pause, one different response. Over time, these moments create momentum. The old programs fade, not because you fight them, but because you no longer need them. As the nervous system learns safety in the present, it releases its grip on the past. And in that release, you begin to experience life with more clarity, more choice, and less internal resistance. You start responding instead of reacting. You start moving instead of hesitating. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because the system inside you finally feels free to update. Growth does not happen in dramatic breakthroughs. It happens in quiet shifts that slowly become your new normal. And one day, you realize that the voice that once controlled your decisions has softened, not because it was silenced, but because it was understood. And in that understanding, you discover something simple and powerful. You are no longer living by old code. You are living by choice.